Lord of Mysteries. My Identities Echoes Across Time. Chapter 311 to 320. Your first task is to accompany me to the Trunsoest Empire. I need the uniqueness from the eternal blazing sun. Lynn smiled at Artisan and said, perhaps you wouldn't mind playing a part in this plan. For example, tricking Occuses, the eternal blazing sun. While Lynn felt somewhat awkward about the idea of hitting Artisan, and had only done so with Artisan's consent, he had no such reservations about Occuses. It's everyone's duty to deal with a traitor. Even if it wasn't for the outer gods, Lynn had no qualms about punishing Occuses for betraying the ancient sun god and causing Saucerer's disappearance. Although Lynn didn't explicitly state his plan, Artisan seemed to understand and hesitated. Wouldn't that be a bit too much? Are you close to him? Lynn glanced at him. Not really, we're just on good terms. Artisan scratched his hair. But he's a sequence 0, and without the Illuminator characteristic, I'm just sequence 2. If he notices something wrong. In simple terms, it's not impossible to trick Occuses, but it's very dangerous. It's not that surprising, considering the flimsy camaraderie among high-ranking Beyonders. While Artisan might have a tenuous friendship with Ammonises, his relationship with Occuses was purely cooperative. Artisan sought Occuses' support to become a paragon, while he needed a malleable ally. Just as the Trunsoest Empire's 6 gods had certain ties, their relationship was primarily driven by interests. After the 4 Emperors' war, when the 6 gods emerged victorious, the Night Emperor and his Empress fell. No one knows if the 6 gods facilitated the Night Emperor's fall, but 2 things are certain. First, part of the Night Emperor's characteristics became the spoils of the Augustus family, who were backed by the Evernight Goddess and the Lord of Storms, while the uniqueness of the Night Emperor, later known as the Trunsoest Brass Book, became a god of combat's collection. The critical question is, why did the Night Emperor's characteristics end up with several gods? Were they just watching as the Night Emperor fell? Second, the descendants of the Night Emperor, the royal family of the Trunsoest Empire, were swiftly eradicated by the 6 gods after his fall. As the final victor of the 4 Emperors' war, the Night Emperor received none of the expected spoils. This situation was mirrored in the relationship between Artisan and Occuses. If not for Rassel's intervention, his church in Intis would always be under the eternal blazing sun church's thumb, merely a sidekick. Therefore, while there was some camaraderie between him and Occuses, it was minimal. Otherwise, he would have long since joined the ancient sun gods through Occuses. Maybe their relationship would improve if Occuses helped him become a paragon, but for now, it was limited. I'm not in a rush to take the Illuminator characteristic from you, Lynn said with a smile. You can keep it until we get the uniqueness from the eternal blazing sun. Lynn wasn't in a hurry to take Artisan's Illuminator characteristics since he wasn't ready to advance yet. He preferred to let Artisan keep it for a while longer. Would Artisan back out? Lynn thought, let him try anyway, I'll just beat him up if he does. It's not impossible, but it feels very dangerous. After all, he's a sequence 0. Artisan's eyes lit up at Lynn's words but then showed hesitation. And he has the uniqueness of a paragon, which can easily suppress me. Everyone knows that uniqueness can be a burden and a bane for angels of the same sequence if they can't fully accumulate it. While other sequences might make some use of uniqueness, for the same sequence, it's pure trouble, unless, of course, it's stored elsewhere, like Will does. Lynn glanced at Artisan, understanding that he wasn't unwilling to work but genuinely afraid of danger, showing a clear sense of self-preservation. Of course, if he weren't a coward, he wouldn't have withdrawn from the competition so easily. Come to think of it, he seems to fit not only the Wheel of Fortune pathway but also the 3 Mysteries pathway, Lynn thought to himself, chuckling. After considering for a moment, he said, I can have Bethel make arrangements to allow you to escape through the spirit world at the first sign of danger. Although Occuses is sequence 0, he's not as good as Bethel in terms of space. I'll also engage the eternal blazing sun at the first sign of conflict. It won't take more than 15 seconds. I don't think you'll be dead in 15 seconds, right? Then I have no problem. Artisan seemed to breathe a sigh of relief, knowing Lynn was truthful. While Mr. Door might not defeat the eternal blazing sun in a fight, he was certainly unmatched in escaping. As for 15 seconds, Artisan sheepishly said, I won't die in 15 seconds, but I'll probably get beaten badly. I'm not good at fighting, and I don't have powerful sealed artifacts. That's apparent. Lynn nodded, agreeing that Artisan wasn't skilled in combat. Even though Lynn could easily defeat a Sequence 1, Artisan's combat ability was lacking. As for sealed artifacts, if the god of craftsmanship had more, he wouldn't have been criticized by Russell in his diary. Fortunately, Lynn didn't need Artisan to fight. In fact, the last thing Lynn needed was more fighters. He himself could handle 3 Sequence 0s alone. Medici, despite still being Sequence 2, could temporarily use the King of Angels' powers, and as an angel of the Red Priest pathway, Medici's combat prowess was formidable. And the true creator, though half mad, was also incredibly strong in combat, as was the Black Emperor, Solomon, who allied with the true creator for a reason. So, did Lynn need more fighters? No, he needed someone like Azek who could help manage documents, run the church, and handle logistics. Hence, Lynn meaningfully patted Artisan's shoulder and smiled, "It's okay, you don't need to fight for this job. As a former Illuminator, you're good at making all sorts of sealed artifacts and Beyonder weapons, right?" End of chapter. Welcome to Fanfic Audiobook, your go-to place for immersive audiobooks. If you enjoy the content, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to our channel for more amazing stories. Artisan nodded confidently upon hearing the question, unaware of the overtime hell awaiting him. "I am indeed very skilled at creating various sealed artifacts and Beyonder weapons. The only limitation is the lack of Beyonder characteristics. If you can provide the necessary characteristics, I can craft the best sealed artifacts for you. How capable are you in handling administrative tasks? If I asked you to manage the paperwork of a church or oversee the logistics department, could you do it?" Lynn asked again. Artisan thought for a moment, then nodded again. "I used to follow an ancient god and did similar work, so it shouldn't be a problem. If I gave you some blueprints, could you create the corresponding machinery or artifacts?" Lynn continued. "That depends on the blueprints. If they only contain basic concepts, then no. But if they are detailed enough, I should be able to manage," Artisan said. Then, pausing curiously, he asked, "So, what exactly is machinery?" Machinery is a scientific concept and something that savants will need to explore in the future. At least, that's the current trend. Whether this will change depends on technological advancements, Lynn explained simply, or rather, glossed over it. After all, the definitions of steam and machinery were too complex to explain thoroughly. Lynn himself didn't fully understand them, so it was impossible to give a detailed explanation to Artisan. "So, this is new knowledge, correct?" Artisan looked thoughtful. Although there hadn't been any significant technological breakthroughs in the past millennium to aid in potion digestion, he wasn't foolish. Clearly realizing something, he asked, "Is this knowledge necessary to digest the Illuminator potion?" "It seems your progress in digesting the Illuminator potion isn't ideal," Lynn observed, smiling but not answering directly. However, Lynn wasn't surprised. An Illuminator is supposed to enlighten civilization, and even if their technological innovation requirements aren't as high as those of a paragon, they still exist. A paragon might be required to guide a civilization towards a more perfect direction or even to transform themselves into a cyborg. This could explain why Artisan chose to ascend to Sequence 0 without fully digesting the Illuminator potion. It wasn't just luck, it was also because he had no clear direction for technological innovation to digest the Illuminator potion, resulting in poor progress and eventually relying on luck. While others might fail with such luck, Artisan was exceptionally fortunate, managing to ascend despite limited potion digestion. "No wonder I couldn't fully digest the Illuminator potion. I was going in the wrong direction." Artisan sighed, visibly disappointed. Despite his efforts, his progress in digesting the Illuminator potion was minimal. However, Artisan quickly regained his spirits. "But if I can't digest it, so be it. It no longer concerns me now." "That's not necessarily true. If you later become a king of angels, it will still be necessary," Lynn said, glancing at Artisan. "Of course, if you plan to switch to a non-adjacent pathway, I don't mind helping you." No, I don't want to go half mad. Sequence 2 is good enough for me." Artisan quickly waved his hands. Then, hesitating, he asked, "Are you planning to teach me that knowledge? Do you want to learn it?" Lynn asked, not confirming or denying, just smiling at him. "I don't mind learning new knowledge, but aren't you afraid that once I've learned it and digested the Illuminator potion, I won't give you the Sequence 1 characteristic?" Artisan asked curiously. "If you can defeat me, Then you can do as you wish, Lynn replied with a smile. Artisan's body tensed up, and he quickly shook his head. I was just joking. Since I promised to give you the Illuminator characteristic, I won't go back on my word. Lynn merely smiled at his assurance, not expressing belief or disbelief. Lynn intended to teach Artisan some knowledge about steam and machinery, partly to see if it would help him digest the Knowledge Magister potion faster and partly to prepare for his role as an Illuminator. Teaching a student like Artisan and spreading knowledge about steam and machinery with them to bring about technological change in the world, who could say that wasn't a way to digest the Illuminator potion in advance? As for whether Artisan might develop thoughts of betrayal, so long as Lynn's strength remained sufficient, he would never betray him. And if Lynn's strength wasn't enough, Artisan would eventually turn against him. Lynn understood this clearly. He wasn't some protagonist with a commanding presence that made high-sequence beings willingly bow down and follow him without resentment. Lynn knew that there would always be a barrier between him and Artisan. While they might develop a good relationship in the future and become friends, he would never be as close as Lynn was with Saussure, Klein, Medici, and others. But just as Lynn didn't mind working with the Evernight goddess despite her wariness of him, he didn't care as long as the other party was willing to work for him. Lynn wasn't trying to make friends with everyone. I trust you. Lynn smiled, looking at Artisan with the satisfaction of a capitalist admiring a useful tool. He patted Artisan's shoulder again and said, but all this can wait until after our trip to the Trunsoest Empire. Your primary task is to help me lure out the eternal blazing sun for a beating. Don't worry, even if he attacks, I won't let you die. Although Artisan couldn't fight, he could serve as support and help manage the church. Despite his lack of knowledge about steam and machinery, he was willing to learn and could learn effectively. To Lynn, that made him the perfect tool. Therefore, Lynn didn't mind providing Artisan with some protection before any thoughts of betrayal arose. Thank you. Artisan nodded with some difficulty. It wasn't the task itself that bothered him but a sudden chill he felt, as if something dreadful awaited him. Why did he feel this way? Artisan was puzzled but decided to chalk it up to a mistake. Yes, it was probably just a mistake. End of chapter. In the fourth epic, with Artisan as the chosen tool, I plan to recruit Azek to work for me after the Trunsoest Empire journey. I can also count Medici among them. My team is starting to take shape. Whether establishing the true creator church or initiating the Industrial Revolution and playing the role of the Illuminator, things will be much easier for me. I won't have to handle everything personally. Hey, it was said to be a shell organization before, but now it's growing. In the fifth epic, after visiting the Russell Memorial Exhibition with Klein, Lynn silently counted the tools working for him, feeling delighted. Though only Artisan had officially joined his garden, Azek was clearly not far behind. Bethel had already promised to serve as Lynn's pope once the corruption was removed, and Russell would do the same after his own corruption was dealt with. Medici, even more so, didn't require coaxing. Though Lynn had no intention of competing with Saussure for people, being family means there's no need for such distinctions. If something urgent arises, Medici, and even Saussure himself, wouldn't refuse to help. So, although Lynn's shell organization still had just a few members, its future was bright, as long as he could bring them all in. The others are hard to recruit for now, but Medici's Sequence 2 power can be enhanced. Once the Augustus family is defeated, he'll ascend to Sequence 1. Lynn thought, glancing back at the museum hosting the Russell Memorial Exhibition, murmuring internally. Speaking of which, I wonder what Artisan thinks now. Lynn was quite curious about the attitude of the god of steam and machinery toward him. Was he terrified and wanting to kill Lynn to protect his Sequence 0 position? Or was he seeking advice from the Evernight goddess and others for a countermeasure? Or perhaps, like the Angel of Crafts in the fourth epic, he might simply follow his heart's desire. Lynn felt the first scenario was unlikely. Before meeting Artisan, he considered him a potential enemy, but after their encounter, he didn't think Artisan had that kind of courage. If it were Amonizes facing this situation, Lynn had no doubt she would either unite with other gods for a last stand or reach out to negotiate, ensuring some benefits even if she couldn't retain the Sequence 0 position. She'd make it clear that if Lynn didn't compromise, she'd fight to the end. Given her extensive planning and resources, Lynn was confident she could rally at least 5 gods as allies against him or to negotiate. That's why Lynn initially chose to ally with Amonizes, partly due to her established presence in the original work and partly because he didn't want to deal with such intelligent individuals. Winning might be possible but would be very troublesome. Lynn's caution towards Adam was for the same reason. These old tricksters always had hidden resources and alliances, with only a fraction shown in the original story. For example, Adam and the primordial demoness, who knows if there's a deeper connection? During the climactic battle, both seemed to reveal their full hands, but was it really their limit? Lynn doubted it. Adam had invested in Klein too. Even if Adam preferred Amon, Klein becoming the Lord of Mysteries wouldn't impact him much. This world still needed a god to oppose the outer gods. Thus, Klein as the Lord of Mysteries couldn't truly harm Adam, and their enmity wasn't particularly deep. So, I really don't like dealing with these old schemers. I'd rather face straightforward Sequence 0s like the Lord of Storms, the god of combat, and artisan, Lynn sighed internally. Straightforward Sequence 0s like the Lord of Storms and god of combat could barely rally 3 allies. Facing them would be troublesome but manageable. Unlike the Evernight goddess or Adam, top-tier schemers, an open conflict with them would likely escalate to a global confrontation. Fortunately, Lynn wasn't truly at odds with these two schemers. He had a stable cooperation with the Evernight goddess and had invested too much for her to betray him unless he posed a clear threat. While not in direct cooperation with Adam, he seemed inclined to placate rather than oppose Lynn. Our only conflict is Sasrir. But as a purely rational being, if the true creator regains clarity and reverts to Sasrir, would you let him lead? After all, you two are one entity. Why not let Sasrir lead? Lynn spoke silently, knowing Adam might pick up on his unguarded thoughts. Lynn knew his intellect couldn't match these old schemers. He didn't delude himself. Adam could easily discern his attitude. So, he openly questioned. What will you do? How will you choose? Will you oppose me, or sacrifice yourself? This is a necessary sacrifice, Adam. Lynn's smile grew warmer as he continued internally. Compared to you, Sasrir is more suited to be God, isn't he? In your view, Sasrir is also the ancient sun god. With me firmly supporting Sasrir, who could be more suitable? If you ascend and kill Sasrir, even if you become a great old one, I will kill you. I promise. Lynn was genuinely curious about Adam's choice. Could he make himself the necessary sacrifice, just as he did with Medici? Lynn admitted he was still a bit angry about the Medici incident. The main culprit, Tudor, had been beaten, with his fate decided. Amon had been exploded several times. Now, the only one left was Adam. And the little Mr. Bubbles, being very vengeful, wouldn't let Adam go so easily. End of chapter. Lynn did not plan to employ any devious schemes, he chose a straightforward, open strategy. If Adam's rationality deemed it necessary to sacrifice others, then what would Adam do when the one to be sacrificed was himself? If Adam chose to let Sasrir lead, Lynn might try to save him from disappearing. If Adam did not make that choice, Lynn would still support Sasrir in becoming the leader, meaning Adam would truly vanish. This was a test of humanity versus rationality, posed by Lynn to Adam. He didn't mind if Adam saw the answer in advance because Lynn himself wasn't sure what he would ultimately do. What would you do? Lynn looked towards a corner, silently asking. Lynn, what are you daydreaming about? A hand waved in front of him, snapping Lynn back to reality. He glanced at Klein beside him and responded with a somewhat subtle expression, I just remembered something. Remembered something? Klein paused, then curiously asked, did you remember something about Russell in your past? I'm not sure, maybe. Lynn shook his head, neither confirming nor denying, and vaguely added, I just recalled some things related to the god of craftsmanship. The god of craftsmanship, isn't that the previous title for the god of steam and machinery? You have a connection with him. Well, I guess it's not surprising. Klein's initial surprise gave way to a nuanced expression as he recalled the tea party hosted by Lynn that included major deities like the Earth Mother. What did you remember? Klein asked, his curiosity evident. The god of craftsmanship might have worked for me once. Lynn scratched his head and whispered, do you think this counts as blackmail material against the god of steam and machinery? If he discovers my existence, will he send someone to kill me? Klein was momentarily stunned. He didn't know whether to marvel at the god of craftsmanship's past or to question why Lynn's first reaction was that the god would want him dead. Klein looked around nervously, ensuring no members of the Church of Steam were following them, then whispered, "Are you sure he followed you? He's a true god. My memories suggest so. When he followed me, he was only at sequence 1, before he became a god." Lynn spoke candidly. He wasn't a god. That made sense. The god of steam and machinery only became a sequence 0 in the late 4th epoch, while Lynn had been in this world since the 2nd epoch. Theoretically, it was possible for him to have had the god of craftsmanship as a follower before his apotheosis. Klein pondered. Klein, now being knowledgeable about sequence 0, asked, "Why do you think the god of steam and machinery would want to kill you? Even if he went independent later, it doesn't mean he harbors ill will toward you." Lynn shrugged, "Just a hunch. Maybe we still have a good relationship. Hearing this, I'm worried you might get targeted by the Church of Steam." Klein frowned slightly, clearly concerned. Lynn sighed theatrically, muttering, "I hope that doesn't happen." Lynn's words were partly to tease Mr. Fool but also to give Klein a heads up. If, by some remote chance, the god of steam and machinery or the Evernight goddess targeted him, Klein would be mentally prepared. After all, while the god of steam and machinery might not directly pinpoint him, the Evernight goddess could. She might not know exactly who Lynn Sotos was, but she could suspect his connection to the Angel of Secrets. If only Artisan wasn't foolish enough to be used as a pawn. Lynn mused. He wasn't overly concerned about a direct confrontation with Artisan. In fact, it might give him a justified reason to act and reinforce his position. Or Artisan might seek the Evernight goddess's help, get my information, and try to establish contact. Lynn thought, finding the prospect somewhat intriguing. If Artisan followed his true intentions, Lynn would welcome him. But he has doubts. The costs of giving up a sequence 1 characteristic and the church he'd built were too high. With his indecisive nature, Artisan might just pretend nothing happened until the last moment, choosing to counterattack or follow his true intentions only then. For Lynn, that wouldn't be bad. His main goal was a leisurely life, leaving the hard work of godhood to his avatars. Thus, Lynn wasn't keen on taking over the Church of Steam and Machinery immediately. It would require significant effort to place loyal people within the church, convert its members, and gain their trust, rather than just nominal leadership. Violence wouldn't solve everything, especially in matters of religious faith. Even if Artisan submitted, his followers might not. Fanatics can be unpredictable. End of chapter. Even though the entire church could slowly be reformed, it would require time and cause chaos. Right now, there isn't enough time for Lynn to make those changes gradually. Just as the Evernight goddess chose to retain the faith of the god of combat after defeating him, rather than transforming all of the god of combat's church into the Evernight church to avoid excessive chaos before the apocalypse, Lynn wouldn't take over the church of the god of steam and machinery at this critical moment, even if he immediately submitted. It wouldn't be of much use to him and would waste time better spent on other pursuits. At most, he would use Artisan's name to call upon some members of the church when needed. Lynn preferred to let his Smurf account handle the god of steam and machinery's church first, dealing with those who needed to be subdued and dealt with. Then, his main account could take over the established church. This tough task was best left to the Smurf account, which had time to handle it slowly, unlike the main account. Forget it. Instead of guessing, it's better to see Artisan's reaction later. The priority now is to create the dream space for Russell and his daughter to meet, Lynn thought. Looking at Klein beside him, who was still pondering whether the god of steam and machinery would hunt him down, Lynn couldn't help but smile. He patted Klein's shoulder and said, "Don't worry about that. If the sky falls, the tall ones will hold it up. There's the Angel of Secrets anyway, so they won't come after me." More than the god of craftsmanship. Lynn glanced at Klein and lowered his voice, "Did you just discover something?" Klein, coming back to his senses, wasn't sure whether to say Lynn was big-hearted or insensitive. But Lynn was right. If something big happened, there were taller people to handle it. Relaxing at this thought, Klein also lowered his voice and said, "I might have found a card of blasphemy." He indeed had some discoveries or suspicions. Klein suspected that among the bookmarks displayed at Russell's commemorative exhibition, one might be a card of blasphemy. He had asked Miss Justice to verify this but hadn't detailed it to Lynn during the exhibition. Now that Lynn asked, he didn't hide it and explained briefly. That is worth a try. Lynn nodded in agreement and hesitated before saying, "Speaking of the cards of blasphemy, Angel of Secrets might have won. I think it was the Red Priest card. Lynn was laying the groundwork for future events. He didn't intend to compete with Klein for the Black Emperor card, as it was less useful to him compared to Klein. However, it wouldn't hurt to trade the Red Priest card with Klein for the Black Emperor card for research purposes. What? The real owner of the Red Priest card is Medici. That doesn't matter. Red Priest card. Which pathway is that from? Klein was curious but not too surprised about the Angel of Secrets possibly possessing a card of blasphemy. With all the shocking revelations earlier, this seemed normal in comparison. It seems to be from the Hunter pathway, but I'm not sure. We can ask later. Lynn shook his head, feigning ignorance. After chatting for a while, they boarded the tram. Unnoticed by anyone, a blonde priest stood in a corner, watching them with a compassionate gaze, as if looking at the sun or simply the view. A necessary sacrifice. Meanwhile, in the divine kingdom of the god of steam and machinery, the deity sat among a pile of mechanical parts, clutching his head in pain. He had just received a memory that shouldn't have existed but did. Just like how the Evernight goddess and others quickly understood that the past had been altered after receiving such memories, Artisan wasn't as ancient but wasn't stupid either. He understood what the memory represented. He also noticed some knowledge in his mind that wasn't there before, but appeared without his awareness. Unlike others like Medici and the Evernight goddess, who were shocked and probing the person in the memory, the god of steam and machinery felt one thing: doom. A terrifying being capable of altering the past was targeting him, aiming to replace him as the paragon. To him, this was a nightmare. No, I can't be this pessimistic. If he didn't choose to kill my past self and take my characteristic forcibly, it means I still have value to him. He analyzed in his mind. So, as long as I obediently give up my position as the paragon, he shouldn't kill me. I might just need to work for him. He sighed in relief but then hesitated. But do I really have to do this? I worked so hard to become the paragon and fully digest the potion. He bit his lip in reluctance. He knew the easiest choice was to give up the characteristic like his past self and become the follower of the powerful being. But he was reluctant. He had enjoyed the power and pleasure of being a Sequence 0 for too long to revert to a Sequence 2, a mere ant to his current self. Or rather, he was scared. After becoming a god, he had made many enemies. If he fell to Sequence 2, they wouldn't spare him. However, he might protect me, and I might not have to become Sequence 2. Maybe I could become a king of angels. And even Amonizes stands with him. He can alter the past, so my reluctance doesn't matter. He smiled bitterly, accepting the reality that he had no choice. The past had been changed. It seemed inevitable that he would be replaced as the paragon. TN. Alternate title: Pitiful God of the Fifth Epoch. End of chapter. Why am I so unlucky? The god of steam and machinery slumped over the table, feeling utterly dejected. If Russell were here, he might have a solution. He sighed, or maybe I should follow his example, switch to another pathway, and leave the Savon and Mystery Prior pathways to Lynn. He said he wouldn't mind helping me become a Sequence 0 on another pathway. He shouldn't be lying. But that would make me half mad, although there are ways to gradually expel the characteristics and recover. The god of steam and machinery looked conflicted, unable to make a decision. He was unwilling to directly give up his characteristics and become a Sequence 2, nor did he think he could defeat him. He wanted to take a leap but he feared the consequences of going half mad. However, he didn't resent Lynn. For one, he didn't dare to, and for another, the competition for godhood was inherently fierce. The strong rose to the top, and even he had seized his characteristics from someone else to become an illuminator. As a competitor, Lynn's decision not to kill him was already merciful. He only blamed his bad luck for ending up on the same pathway as him. If only Lynn was in Sun pathway. He sighed deeply, genuinely not minding if his ally was Lynn instead of the eternal blazing sun. He would even welcome it. Over the years, the eternal blazing sun had tricked him more than a few times. Unfortunately, that wasn't the case, and the unlucky one was him. What should I do? The god of steam and machinery scratched his head, looking quite depressed. After a few minutes of indecision, he finally seemed to make up his mind. Maybe I should first gather some intelligence from the Evernight goddess. She definitely knows more about Lynn Sotos than I do. Lynn, of course, had no idea that the god of steam and machinery, after much hesitation, decided to seek intelligence from the Evernight goddess. Even if he knew, he wouldn't be surprised, as this was one of his predictions. He would be eager to see Artisan's next move, knowing that any action taken after consulting the Evernight goddess could indicate her current attitude. It could be a probe or an attempt to make further amends, but it would certainly make the situation clearer. But Lynn didn't know, so he was simply focused on diligently creating the dream space for Russell and Bernadette's meeting. Phew, finally done. Lynn wiped the imaginary sweat from his forehead, smiling with satisfaction at the completed dream space. He was eager to witness the upcoming father-daughter reunion. Of course, Lynn had a secondary motive for creating this dream space besides allowing Russell and Bernadette to meet regularly. He also had another idea. With this space, Bethel can spend more time tutoring Mr. Fool. I'm such a considerate person. Lynn patted his conscience, his smile growing brighter. Since Bethel started tutoring Klein, Lynn had noticed that Mr. Fool could spend very little time in the gray fog. Additionally, maintaining communication with Bethel consumed spirituality, so Klein's lessons were often cut short, severely hindering his progress. So, as Mr. Fool's best buddy, Lynn felt obligated to provide a better learning environment to improve the quality of his classes. Now Klein can handle his affairs and potion digestion during the day and attend lessons in his dreams at night. It's perfect. Lynn felt like a genius for coming up with this time-efficient plan. As for whether Mr. Fool might get overwhelmed with studying, well, Lynn thought, learning more during class is better than lacking knowledge in critical moments. He wasn't a devil, he would seek Mr. Fool's opinion. If Klein strongly opposed such intense studying, Lynn wouldn't force it, though it would be a pity. I should share this good news with Klein. And tonight's Russell father-daughter reunion would be a shame to miss without Mr. Fool witnessing it. Lynn stroked his chin. While logic told him that the meeting between two fellow transmigrators should be delayed, his sense of fun told him it would be much more interesting to have Klein join in. After all, sharing a spectacle makes it more enjoyable. As a mature adult, Lynn's choice was obvious: fun. Let me think. Got it. I'll place my main account and Klein together in a hidden audience seat. After Russell's touching reunion, I'll arrange for Mr. Fool to meet the Emperor. This way, I can enjoy multiple spectacles at once. Happiness. Lynn thought about the upcoming scenes and felt very pleased. Always a man of action, Lynn quickly moved forward with his plan. While his main account was at home drinking coffee and reading a novel, his divine incarnation appeared and knocked on the door of 15 Minsk Street. Coming. Soon, the door opened. Klein, who had been planning his evening's actions, was surprised to see the Angel of Secrets standing there. Almost instinctively, he asked, is the machinery hivemind really going to check Lynn's gas meter? Klein couldn't be blamed for this. Not long ago, he had discussed this with Lynn. Seeing the angel now, his thoughts naturally went in that direction. Hearing this, the Angel of Secrets smiled and said calmly, don't worry. If the machinery hivemind really comes to check his gas meter, I'll make sure to check the God of Steam's gas meter as well. These words were spoken casually but left Klein stunned. He then remembered Lynn's achievements in the fourth epic and felt a bit strange. However, this also showed that the angel was very powerful, even capable of confronting the god of steam and machinery. Feeling a bit emotional, Klein couldn't help but ask, do you have a bad relationship him? End of chapter. The nature of my relationship with him depends on his choice. The Angel of Secrets spoke with a somewhat meaningful tone. Glancing at Klein, he smiled and asked, aren't you going to invite me in? Oh, please come in. Klein was momentarily stunned, then quickly stepped aside to let the Angel of Secrets in. After the Angel of Secrets sat on the sofa, Klein asked, coffee or tea? Coffee will do. My taste is no different from Lynn's, the Angel of Secrets replied with a smile. Hearing this, Klein glanced at him, then made 2 cups of coffee. As he handed one to the Angel of Secrets, he asked, is there something you need from me? Should I call Lynn over? As he asked this, Klein mentally prepared himself for some surprising news. After all, visits from the angel were never trivial matters. You don't need to call him. I've already notified him, and he will be here shortly, the Angel of Secrets said, taking a sip of coffee slowly. Sure enough, a few seconds after the Angel of Secrets spoke, the wind chime at the door rang. Soon, The sofa opposite Mr. Fool had two identical people sitting on it. I mean, why don't you put on a mask or change your appearance? This feels weird, like I'm looking in a mirror. Lynn frowned, looking troubled as he addressed the Angel of Secrets next to him. Let's reiterate, Lynn is a professional when it comes to playing roles. You'll get used to it. The Angel of Secrets cast a glance at the Drama King and spoke indifferently. Is this really about getting used to it? Lynn rolled his eyes in exasperation. Klein watched the interaction between the two, his mouth twitching slightly, unsure of what to say. He handed the other cup of coffee to Lynn, made himself a cup, and then looked at the angel, asking, "Can you tell us why you're here now?" "I'm here mainly for 3 reasons." The Angel of Secrets looked at Klein and smiled. "First, I want to exchange the cards of blasphemy with you for a period of time. I want to exchange my Red Priest card for the Black Emperor card that you are about to obtain. It won't be for long, just 2 months." Hearing this, Klein's heart skipped a beat, and he asked, "Is this what you saw in the future? So that bookmark is indeed a card of blasphemy, and which pathway is the Black Emperor?" "This is indeed the future I saw. As for the Black Emperor, it belongs to the lawyer pathway," the Angel of Secrets replied, then added, "This pathway would actually suit your brother. If you wish to make him a Beyander, he can take this pathway." Lynn's words were sincere. He genuinely believed that Benson was well suited for the lawyer pathway. Moreover, in this apocalyptic era, becoming a Beyander carried less risk than before, and the times were more dangerous than ever. Thus, there was no better era to become a Beyander than now. Klein frowned at these words. He wasn't surprised that the angel knew about Benson, but he was a bit anxious. "What have you seen?" Klein didn't think the angel would suggest this without reason. This is the best era to become a Beyander, and also the most dangerous. Lynn manipulated the Angel of Secrets to show a mysterious expression and continued, "War will come soon, both in the mundane world and in the mystical. In any other era, I wouldn't suggest your family become Beyonders, but in this era, although there are risks for ordinary people becoming Beyonders, it's not necessarily a bad thing. At least when danger comes, they will have some ability to protect themselves." Lynn wasn't lying. War was inevitable. In the original work, the final war that turned everything into chaos was due to the accumulated contradictions of the era. Although the churches and the 7 gods played a significant role, even without them, the war would have likely broken out. It was just a matter of time. It was the choice of the era and a historical inevitability, just as the Industrial Revolution would have come even without Russell. The gods acted as a catalyst, determining who would emerge victorious in the war. War. Klein's frown deepened. He did not doubt the angel's words, but they alarmed him. As someone who had received 9 years of compulsory education, Klein understood what war meant. Once the flames of war ignited, ordinary people like Benson and Melissa could easily be drawn in and become cannon fodder, dying without a clear cause. Even though Klein himself was a Sequence 7 Beyander, he couldn't guarantee his survival in a war. But the risks of becoming a Beyander. Klein hesitated. The extraordinary powers in this world weren't necessarily benevolent. Beyonders often faced the risk of losing control. While Klein wanted his brother and sister to have more protection, he worried about the potential for tragic accidents before war even broke out. "This is the best era to become a Beyander," the Angel of Secrets repeated, smiling at Klein. "If you are worried about the risk of losing control, I can assure you that in this apocalyptic era, the risk of losing control for low and mid-sequence Beyonders has decreased significantly. There has never been a better time to become a Beyander." Klein pondered this, then asked, "Will they face danger?" The Angel of Secrets looked at Klein and, without hiding anything, said, "In the original future, you saved them, but now, everything has slightly changed. I can't be sure if you can still save them in this current future." Klein's pupils contracted sharply. He knew what the Angel of Secrets meant, causing him to purse his lips. A few seconds later, he made a decision. He looked at the Angel of Secrets and seriously asked, "Can I purchase the Savon Pathway Potion formula from you?" He knew that his brother and sister were likely to be drawn into the war and face danger in the future. Thus, Klein decided to ask for their opinions. If they were willing, he would help them become Beyonders. Klein intended to buy the Savon Potion formula for Melissa. He knew how much she loved things about machinery, so the Savon pathway was most suitable for her. End of chapter. Yes, I can sell you the entire sequence of potion formulas, as long as you can afford the price, the Angel of Secrets smiled, looking at Klein like he was an empty wallet. No, ahem, I don't need the whole sequence for now, Klein nearly choked. He couldn't afford the entire sequence of potion formulas, and buying them all would be unnecessary. So Klein said, if my sister is willing to become a Beyander, I want to buy the formulas for Sequence 9, Sequence 8, and Sequence 7 first. The reason for purchasing these 3 sequences first was because Klein was short on money, and also because the promotion from Sequence 6 onwards would be much more challenging. He had to consider whether Melissa could handle the corresponding promotion risks and how long it would take to reach that stage. There was no need to buy them all now. Sure, if you need the corresponding materials, I can also provide them at market price, the Angel of Secrets smiled. Ahem, I'll purchase from you when I need them, Klein coughed again, calculating his wallet's balance. With his current savings, helping Benson and Melissa become Sequence 9 Beyonders wasn't a big problem. However, Klein had to consider his own promotion. Although he already had the main material for Faceless, the auxiliary materials were also a considerable expense, not to mention the auxiliary materials for Marionettist, which made his poor wallet even emptier. Once he finished digesting the magician potion, Klein didn't plan to apply for the Faceless potion promotion from the church, because he didn't have enough merit to directly apply for a Sequence 6 potion. Waiting for the church's process would take a long time. Klein already felt a sense of urgency and didn't want to waste too much time on this. Fortunately, the Evernight Church was quite open in certain aspects. For field agents like Klein, who performed special tasks, as long as they reported and passed the review, the church wouldn't stop them from using their own money for potion promotions. This was also evident in the original work. For example, if the hanged man Alger hadn't wanted to hide his mastery of the acting method from the church, he wouldn't have needed to conceal his promotion. After Alger obtained the main material for Sequence 4 and learned the corresponding formula, the Storm Church tacitly approved his promotion to Sequence 4. However, most people wouldn't choose to use their own money for promotions. Beyander characteristics weren't easy to come by. Unlike Klein, who could find them with ease, most church Beyonders relied on time to accumulate enough merit to apply for promotion potions before fully digesting their current potion. Cases like Klein's, where someone digests their potion quickly but has insufficient merit, were rare. If you need anything, you can contact me through Lynn, the Angel of Secrets smiled, looking at Klein. Suddenly curious, he asked, do you blame me? If I hadn't changed everything, your brother and sister would have been safe during the war without facing the risks of losing control. I did, Klein nodded at the Angel of Secrets' first sentence. Hearing the second, he looked at the Angel of Secrets seriously and asked, if it weren't for you, would some of us, including Dunn, have died in the Tingen incident? You and Dunn should have died at that time. Lynn didn't hide the truth. Through the Angel of Secrets avatar, he looked at Klein and said calmly, the difference is, you would have revived due to the power of the Saphira Castle, while Dunn would have remained in the grave forever. Captain. Despite being mentally prepared, Klein couldn't help but feel uneasy upon hearing this. However, recalling the happy life Dunn now had with his fiancée, Miss Daly, Klein felt at ease. He asked the Angel of Secrets, the Saphira Castle. The gray fog has a name. And more importantly, it can bring me back to life. Yes, it indeed has a name, and it can indeed revive you, but there will be a price to pay. The Angel of Secrets didn't hide the truth, nor did he elaborate further. Klein frowned, deep in thought. A few seconds later, he pushed aside these thoughts and looked at the Angel of Secrets, saying, now, I don't blame you. You saved me and the captain, and many others. I will always be grateful to you. I do worry about Benson and Melissa's safety, but as a beneficiary of your change in fate, I neither have the right nor will I blame you. I will do my best to prevent tragedies, like the butterfly effect. Since I benefit from the good brought by the butterfly effect, I must also bear the bad. Clearly, Klein remained as rational and clear-headed as ever. However, Benson and Melissa are the ones affected. If they find out in the future and blame you, I will try to persuade them, Klein added. He wouldn't blame the Angel of Secrets for future unknown risks, but he wouldn't forgive on behalf of others either. Hey, Lynn couldn't help but laugh. Although he had anticipated the answer, Klein's response still made him feel relieved. Indeed, becoming the fool's companion was a good choice. As for whether Benson and Melissa would blame him, frankly, Lynn didn't care much. Based on their personalities in the original work, if they knew Klein would have died without him, resulting in their separation, they would only be grateful, not resentful. Now, let's talk about the second matter. A delighted Lynn controlled the Angel of Secrets to continue. I have arranged a long-awaited reunion between a father and daughter tonight. I would like to invite you both to witness it. Klein hadn't expected the topic to shift so quickly. He hesitated and asked, a reunion? Do we know these people? I don't recall knowing any long-separated fathers and daughters. Is it another old friend? Lynn's main avatar also spoke up, curious and playfully acting as usual. In a way, you do know them, the Angel of Secrets nodded, smiling brightly. The father is named Russell, and the daughter is Bernadette. End of chapter. Russell. Emperor Russell, fellow transmigrator. Didn't he already fall? Could it be he was resurrected, or was his death faked? Bernadette. Isn't she Russell's eldest daughter? Klein was utterly dumbfounded at this moment. He never expected the Angel of Secrets to drop such a bombshell. Russell. He's still alive. Lynn, who was beside him, suddenly turned around, his expression first surprised, then tightened his fist as if remembering something, and asked the Angel of Secrets, what sequence is he now? If you intend to vent your anger on him, I suggest you reconsider. Although Russell is in a poor state, he is still considered a sequence 0. The Angel of Secrets glanced at Lynn, who was acting dramatic, and said slowly. Lynn's expression stiffened immediately, then he pursed his lips and said stubbornly, just wait, sequence 0. I'll become a sequence 0 someday too. Hearing this, Klein couldn't help but glance at his companion, not knowing how to comment. He could only shake his head with a wry smile. He then looked at the Angel of Secrets and asked, what's the situation exactly? Can you explain? Let me think about what I can tell you. The Angel of Secrets pondered for a few seconds before saying, in simple terms, Russell did indeed fall back then. However, because he had already ascended to Black Emperor before his fall, he did not completely die due to the special characteristics of the Black Emperor. He remained in a state where he could be revived at any moment. Then why hasn't he revived until now? Klein was both shocked and curious. Russell hasn't revived because he is corrupted by an evil god. The Angel of Secrets explained slowly, adopting the same explanation given to Bernadette. If Russell were to revive before the corruption is removed, he would become a puppet of the evil god. You should understand the disaster a mad god could bring. Klein couldn't help but gasp, contributing to global warming, and asked urgently, has he gotten rid of the corruption? No, but with my help, he has temporarily suppressed the corruption and regained his clarity. The Angel of Secrets shook his head, sighed, and said, the evil god that corrupted Russell is someone you are quite familiar with. Klein was stunned, immediately thinking of Bethel, who was also corrupted by an evil god, and uncertainly asked, could it be the primordial moon again? Indeed, it's her. Strictly speaking, Russell's corruption by the primordial moon is also somewhat related to Bethel. The Mr. Door Russell encountered was always Bethel's corrupted personality. Lynn did not hide the matter and explained straightforwardly through the Angel of Secrets. I remember Russell seemed to have encountered Mr. Door very early on. Could he have been corrupted back then? Klein immediately recalled the contents of Russell's diary and asked uncertainly. Russell did encounter initial corruption at that time, but it wasn't severe. Later, as you can guess, under the guidance of Bethel's corrupted personality, Russell gradually fell into the primordial moon's trap and became deeply corrupted. Even after becoming sequence 0, he couldn't escape and could only remain in a state between life and death. The Angel of Secrets said this with a slightly more serious expression, looking at Klein and said, there are many evil gods in this world, and among them, the primordial moon is one of the most evil and powerful. If you encounter anything related to her in the future, do not act recklessly. It's best to contact me immediately to avoid unnecessary accidents. I understand. Klein nodded solemnly, raising his vigilance and dread towards the primordial moon to the highest level. Both Mr. Door and Emperor Russell had fallen to this evil god, corrupted and turned into puppets. Klein did not believe that as a sequence 7, he could fight against such a force. If he encountered any related matters, he would immediately seek the Angel of Secrets' help to avoid repeating their tragedies. However, Klein looked at the Angel of Secrets and asked with some doubt and concern, this evil god is so dangerous, are you okay? Although he knew Lynn could handle a sequence 0, the primordial moon, who could corrupt and control a Sequence Zero Emperor, was evidently no pushover. Klein was genuinely worried about the Angel of Secrets' safety. Yeah, are you okay? You're not corrupted by the primordial moon too, are you? Lynn echoed, looking worried. Don't worry. Although I can't deal with her for now, she can't deal with me either. The Angel of Secrets smiled and reassured them, this isn't something you need to worry about right now. I just wanted to give you a heads up to prevent unexpected situations. Hearing this, Klein felt slightly relieved and finally had a rough estimate of the Angel of Secrets' strength. Clearly able to counter the primordial moon, the Angel of Secrets was very strong, though not overwhelmingly so. However, he should be among the strongest of the Sequence Zero. Klein then thought of something else and asked, since you said Russell hasn't revived, how will he meet his daughter? In that special state between life and death. Russell indeed hasn't revived, and he won't meet his daughter in the real world. The Angel of Secrets explained simply, then smiled more brightly and said slowly, they will reunite in a dream space I created. A dream? Klein was taken aback, but after thinking it over, it seemed quite normal. Russell's state was clearly not good and possibly very dangerous. Even with the help of the Angel of Secrets to suppress the corruption, it couldn't be said to be 100% safe. In such a situation, he was obviously not suited to meet his daughter in reality. Meeting in a dream created by the Angel of Secrets was indeed relatively safer. After all, there were methods in this world to keep someone awake in a dream, and reuniting in a dream wasn't too unimaginable. In some sense, it matched the mysticism theme of this world. Klein thought to himself, then suddenly heard the Angel of Secrets chuckle softly, making him frown and ask, what's wrong? End of chapter. Nothing much, just looking forward to the father-daughter reunion tonight, said the Angel of Secrets, with an increasingly gentle smile and a hint of meaning. I hope they don't end up fighting. Ah, Klein was taken aback. Huh, Lynn showed an appropriately confused expression. After exchanging a glance, Klein cautiously asked, why would they fight? Even without an answer, Klein's intuition told him that this likely had something to do with the angel before him. There's no helping it. Russell always wrote scandalous news in his diary instead of doing serious work. Bernadette naturally got angry when she found out, the Angel of Secrets explained, with a seemingly helpless smile. Bernadette, how did she find out what was in Russell's diary? Klein couldn't help but ask. Of course, I read it to her, the Angel of Secrets answered frankly. He looked at Klein and continued, if everything goes as planned, Russell himself should be reading his diary to Bernadette tonight. You can enjoy a good show. Klein, what the heck? What kind of devilish move is this? Klein was stunned. Having read many of Russell's diaries, he knew very well what kind of content they contained. While there was a lot of serious stuff, there was also plenty of inappropriate material. Klein couldn't even imagine what the scene would be like when Russell read those scandalous entries to his daughter. This isn't just social suicide, it's social obliteration. Even though the Emperor was quite wild, he didn't deserve this. Klein swallowed hard. Despite often complaining about Russell's wild behavior, he felt a sincere sense of sympathy for Russell at that moment. Russell would probably want to die from embarrassment. And Klein could clearly understand that the reason things developed this way was due to a certain angel's machinations. Devil. Klein glanced at the Angel of Secrets, then quickly looked away, unable to help but think of his mischievous friend, Lynn. Klein recalled Lynn's pranks and, while he thought Lynn was already quite devious, he now realized that compared to the true devilishness of the Angel of Secrets, Lynn's pranks were nothing. Comparison is the thief of joy. Klein felt that it was Lynn, not the Angel of Secrets, who was persecuting him, and felt somewhat relieved. Klein couldn't even imagine being in Russell's position, having to read his own diary, especially that kind of diary. He might as well just smash his head against the Saphira castle and die. Now you see how good I am. I'm not as devilish as some people, Lynn said, patting Klein's shoulder meaningfully. Klein almost nodded instinctively, then hesitated and eventually said, isn't there a possibility that persecuting someone is inherently wrong? What? I can't hear you, Lynn said, feigning ignorance and looking around. Klein's mouth twitched, and he shook his head helplessly. The Angel of Secrets took a sip of coffee and continued, as for the third matter, it also involves the dream space. The Angel of Secrets looked at Klein and smiled, if you're willing, you can use the dream space to study with Bethel while you sleep. Study. Klein was taken aback, clearly not expecting this twist. He frowned but didn't outright reject it. Klein wasn't opposed to studying. In fact, after learning from Mr. Dorr for a few days, he realized how vast Mr. Dorr's knowledge was. Klein often found himself wanting more time to learn, as lessons were often cut short due to limited spirituality in the Saphira Castle. So, Klein didn't mind studying in the dream, but he had some concerns. Is it safe to study in the dream? There's no Saphira Castle to isolate pollution. Don't worry, in the dream space I've created, no one can corrupt you, the Angel of Secrets reassured Klein. Otherwise, I wouldn't let Russell and his daughter meet there. Klein felt relieved and then asked, will studying in the dream affect my state the next day? Even if the body rests, the mind is still active. For that, you can have Lynn helping you. Many abilities of the spectator pathway can alleviate mental fatigue easily. Combined with the appropriate potions, you theoretically won't have any problems even if you study all night. The Angel of Secrets' words sounded almost demonic, but theoretically, it was feasible, like the sleepless pathway, who could work day and night without rest. Seeing Klein's changing expression, Lynn couldn't help but laugh and continued with the Angel of Secrets persona. Of course, balancing work and rest is important in learning. You can decide how much time to spend studying each night and use the remaining time for rest. I won't impose strict rules, I just hope you can learn as much as possible. Klein sighed in relief. Though he was used to intense study from a young age, the idea of working all day and studying all night was too much, even for Klein. Even if his body and spirit could handle it, his mind probably couldn't. Like angels who theoretically could work endlessly without dying, but even seasoned workaholics like Saussure would struggle with endless work. However, Klein could accept studying a few extra hours in the dream each night while resting normally otherwise. The Angel of Secrets then conjured two colorful bubbles and handed them to Klein and Lynn, saying, these are the mediums to enter the dream space. When the time comes, I'll pull you in through them, so be prepared. The Angel of Secrets paused and, looking at Klein, added, I'll schedule the meeting a little late. So, you can retrieve the Black Emperor card. End of chapter.